Welcome to uBook channel. Read and listen to the greatest stories that mankind has ever told. From Iliad to COVID terror, and other famous classics. Enjoy the best world literatures throughout history.
COVID terror. Copyright 2021 by Gerry de Cadiz. All rights reserved. A unified Al-Qaeda and Islamic State took advantage of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in reinvigorating its jihadist cause for dominance and the re-establishment of a caliphate. Secretary-General of the United Nations, Antonio Manuel de Oliveira Guterres, said, "We are in this together, and we will get through this, together."
COVID terror. Chapter 18.
AIMed Laboratory. Palo Alto, California. April 25, 2020. Dr. Guinevere del Pilar reminded her team at AIMed Laboratory of the necessity to always consider safety standards as they went full blast in the formulation of the COVID-19 vaccine. During Phase 2A, we expanded the safety experience with the vaccine. She added that with this stage of the experiment, they were able to determine the most effective dose that a patient can have in the actual treatment. We have to be thankful that there were only few anticipated adverse events like headache, muscle pain, redness, and swelling at the injection site, or low-grade fevers among volunteers. The AIMed research team made it a standard protocol to always be on the lookout for rare but serious events throughout the duration of the experiment. So far, none ever happened. The Phase 2B proceeded without any problem. They began testing the Sinovax to 1,500 healthy adults between the ages of 18 and 55 in the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Japan. The team recruited also volunteers with ages 65 and over. Gwen required her team to write a manual of operations as part of standardizing safety measures, as well as finding the correct dosage in administering the vaccine to the people. Those who were given with the vaccine were observed by the team for 7 days after each vaccination. An assessment was made within the month to regulate the best doses to use. With the help of Aaron Al-Hassani, through the patronage of the broker in WHO, the AIMed research team were able to get the commitment of clinical study sites in cities that have underserved and underrepresented populations. In preparation for the Phase 3 clinical trial, and due to an impressive linkage and influence of Al-Hassani Industries, several organizations were taken in as partners to proactively identify and target diverse patient populations. Professor Sean Gabriel Fitzgerald sipped contentedly a hot chocolate that his mom prepared in his room. He felt reinvigorated after 8 hours of sleep. Peeling off the last transdermal patch, he heaved a sigh of relief. The second confirmatory test on him had shown a negative result of COVID-19 infection. The door opened, and a beautiful woman in early 60s with oriental features came in. "I missed you, Mama." He held her for a minute in a tight embrace. "When can I hug a little you?" Her usual rebuke, encouraging him to discard a bachelor's life. "In God's time, it will come, I assure you." He can't find any other reason to say. His dad had retired from LAPD's finest 2 years ago, while Mrs. Fitzgerald would do some tutorials from time to time. With traveling having been restricted due to pandemic, his parents could not visit some friends, or even family members. His younger sister is in Houston, tending 2 lovely kids, while the husband is on NASA training for the next space mission. It must come. And I hope it should be, with a fine lady like the one waiting for you at the sala. She winked with a knowing smile. He went out from his room to find Gwen browsing through an old issue of Smithsonian magazine. "I thought I should pass by to say hello. How did it goes?" She handed him a choice delicacy, from a Filipino restaurant in LA. Just like what you said, it went away without me knowing it. How are you? I just had a meeting at AI with the boss, on the phase 3 clinical trial we're conducting at the moment. She's been fully absorbed with the Sinovax development project, that she failed to notice the happenings outside her work, as the days go by.
Ensuring the effectiveness and safety of the vaccine to more volunteers is our primordial goal in this stage of the clinical trial. Dr. Guinevere del Pilar held a press conference, along with her research team in front of AI executives, representatives from partner companies, government regulatory bodies, and international media. How is your vaccine different, with those being proposed by other multi-billion companies? A TV reporter asked the AI Med research leader. Coronavirus vaccines can be inactivated coronavirus, live attenuated coronavirus, or S protein-based. In our case, the Sinovax produces an antigen, which lead to a reaction by the human body, to get rid of the COVID-19 virus. We are currently administering vaccinations to at least 75,000 healthy people. With the help of our partner organizations, we involved vulnerable areas in various countries, where the highest rates of COVID-19 transmission and infections are located. Extending her hand to her colleagues, she intoned, "Of course, we were able to foresee pandemic hotspots, with the different expertise of these people. How do you implement the vaccination program?" A WHO representative tested the methodology of AI Med scientists. As a standard operating procedure, we have to test first the volunteers, to see to it that none of them carries the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The British biochemist Dr. Rika Gooden interjected, half of the group will be assigned to receive the Sinovax, while the other half will have a placebo, a fake treatment, which do not contain an active substance meant to affect health. Dr. Perdiz Validkhan, the Iranian microbiologist, explained further, the vaccinated volunteers will be under surveillance for at least 1 year. The occurrence of COVID-19 related symptoms like fever, headache, shortness of breath, dry cough, or gastrointestinal distress will be closely monitored and treated properly, with an adjustment to the vaccine development. So, you're expecting a complication of some sort for this vaccine? A major partner expressed his concern. Dr. Del Pilar take the burden of answering that tricky query. No one should be surprised that people can still be infected with COVID-19 even after their vaccination. Based in our study, the difference is that they will show substantially milder symptoms, compared to those who developed the virus in a control group. What is your timeline, when we will have the vaccine ready for utilization? A director from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services wanted to be assured of the immediate availability of the vaccine in the country. The Australian microbiologist, Dr. Melody Fabillo, assured the audience as to the validity of their experiments. We decided to shorten the phase 3 trials by creating a larger group, which is, doubling the number of participants from the standard for testing, to statistically validate the study and get the results sooner. Sinovax's developer and financier, Aaron Al-Hassani, stood up. It was an extraordinary effort of the AI Med scientists. Although we also have to double the budget, but I guess it's worth it. Based on initial reports, all indicators imply that our vaccine can be ready in the next few months. We will apply to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for its review of the clinical trials and subsequent approval, as regards to the safety and effectiveness of Sinovax. By tomorrow, a surveillance audit for recertification of ISO/IDMP comprising of 5 standards will be conducted at AI Med Laboratory to harmonize the development practices and standardize the substances in the manufacturing process. A presentation was flashed on screen. It shows a newly furbished pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, with technicians in laboratory gowns and other technical personnel doing a final inspection of the factory. Gwen illustrated it for the benefit of the participants. That is our main production area at AI Med Laboratory in Palo Alto. A similar facility is also being readied in Manila, New Delhi, Riyadh, Johannesburg, Berlin, Mexico City, and Boston. We will ensure a steady production line, and a consistent manufacturing process, so that the ensuing consecutive batches of Sinovacs will induce the same immunity in people. Aaron gave the final word. We have a system in place to ramp up commercial-scale manufacturing, even though clinical trials are still ongoing. That is part of our commitment to supply Sinovacs to the public throughout the world. Due to this pandemic, of particular focus for our company is to provide the vaccine to underserved populations on a not-for-profit basis. On the last statement, several cameras flashed, ensuring that the face of the AI executive will be on the headlines of all leading newspapers and media outlets in many countries, captioning Aaron Al-Hassani as the most benevolent philanthropist the world ever had.
The Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles is famous not because of its name but of the climate, amenities, and people that define the glitz and glamour and other well-known characters of Hollywood. Sage can't remember the last time that he dated a lady. Gwen, in a celebrity jeans and boots outfit, can be mistaken as one of those faces that may have appeared in mainstream silver screens. No one can tell that this is the Stanford and Cambridge educated Filipino geneticist who discovered the COVID-19 virus, and currently on the verge of producing the proverbial vaccine for it. You're stunning. That's all he can say as he adjusted her seat belt. He's getting enamored to her, maybe because of their constant interactions in the past months. And you're hot and striking, came her own jest, as she rewarded him with an unexpected kiss on the cheeks. From his home, they visited a drive-in restaurant for food and refreshments, then proceeded to Ocean Avenue on the way to Palisades Park, for a picnic. When will you be free of your lab works? He hugged her as they sat on the bench in a beautiful rose garden, and enjoy the manicured lawns, gorgeous views of the ocean, and the vibrant colors of sunset that Los Angeles is famous of. Maybe just some sporadic moments, but not much. We will be rolling out very soon the first batch of Sinovacs. I thought that maybe you can join me for a jog in this place on some mornings. The ocean breeze is really remarkable and rejuvenating. Well, it's not that demanding. As long as you fetch me from the lab, I'd be happy to be with you. She stopped her words abruptly, then giggled secretly. The last phrase might be misunderstood. So, that's a date. He exclaimed triumphantly and kissed her lovingly. Driving a Porsche 911 Targa 4s in roofless mode, Sage's mind was still at a bliss as they entered Beverly Hills. The lukewarm twilight air makes you think that this is the best place in the world to frolic at night. In the distance ahead, they can discern amidst strong lights the silhouettes of the Beverly Hills 9/11 Memorial Garden, a commemorative space in honor of the victims of the September 11, 2001 attacks. The monument is a 30-foot, 1,900-pound bent floor beam, taken from the wreckage of the World Trade Center. Replicas of the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the Shanksville Field were featured, as well as stainless steel plaques with the names of the 2,977 lives lost during that Al-Qaeda terrorist attack within the U.S. territory. Gwen clearly enjoys the drive. From time to time, she would surreptitiously look at him with that charming smile of hers. As they turned the corner of North Rexford Drive and South Santa Monica Boulevard, a chrome Nissan Versa kept abreast, and rolled down its right passenger window. His Delta Force instinct saved them. He abruptly floored the accelerator and sped away, as several slugs rattled and found a mark in the trunk compartment of his car. Get down. He pushed Gwen deeper in the seat, as another 32 round 9mm bullet spray came their way. Hunkered closely at the car's dashboard, he can see from the side mirror that the one shooting at them is a woman. He navigated the car by weaving through the traffic, as other vehicles tried to get out of their way. A sudden splash of light on the pursuing car enabled Sage to identify the shooter. It's Sharifia, feeding another magazine to a shoulder-Uzi submachine gun. Damn. It's not the way to fight. He cursed, getting angry for not bringing with him any armament to even the fight. The traffic light ahead turned to yellow, and their lane slowed down. He cannot squeeze in the target in both lanes. With urgency, the terrorist's car edged closer. Just when the Versa occupant was about to aim again the Uzi in their direction, a sudden explosion rocked the cars. They were thrown in their seats. His first reaction is to look after Gwen, slumped and seemingly lifeless in her seat. "Hey, are you okay?" He stirred vigorously her shoulder. After what seems to be eternity, she finally coughed. A violent bump at the window left her with a cut in the forehead, with a rivulet of blood running down her face. "I can manage, it's not critical." She held his hands so tight, as the other one wiped away the tears in her eyes. As he scanned the rear-view mirror, the chrome car is on fire. A limping Sharifia is being dragged hastily, away from the scene by a muscular Chinese, down to the opposite side of the highway. His CIA-trained eyes scanned for details of what happened. The area is chaotic, with people getting out of their vehicles in panic. A police siren can be heard approaching the scene. But there is one motorist, who seemed to be unaffected with the commotion. A few cars back on the left lane, a black-jacketed petite rider in dark helmet and tinted visor, reeved a navy blue Yamaha YZR-M1. Their savior seems to have saluted to them, after being assured that they were fine, before heading back to the direction of downtown Los Angeles. There are no incurable diseases, only the lack of will. There are no worthless herbs, only the lack of knowledge. A TV set in the reception lobby of Burj Khalifa in Dubai, repeatedly blared this message from the World Health Organization, encouraging all countries to be more aggressive in their actions towards the pandemic. Senator Charles McCornell lately realized the relevance of this statement from Avicenna. A licensed medical doctor before getting the law degree, and subsequent representation in the U.S. Senate, he was always fascinated with the Muslim physician, who shaped the medical philosophy of the modern world. As majority leader pro tempore, he had proven to be able to sway public policies in several administrations. But not this time. He seems to be at a loss. The pandemic created a void in the way government leaders decide for an appropriate approach in combating the deadly disease. Indeed, it's the lack of will, and lack of knowledge, that plagues the nation. He correctly summarized the problem why the United States is in its throes, with tens of thousands of daily mortality due to the COVID-19 virus. Even his personal conviction was compromised. He was a strong defender of party lines in the GOP, and he usually accorded utmost support to its leadership, just like the present one. But the recent events, and affiliation with characters like the AI executive, leave him some doubts if he is not selling his soul to the devil. Senator, the host invited its guests to experience first Dubai's famous skyline, before the meeting. A Burj Khalifa staff motioned for him to follow her outside the lobby. Charles McCornell felt that he can't take it anymore. He is acrophobic, that extreme, irrational, and persistent fears of heights and situations associated with them. Although the Senate psychiatrists would always advise him to go into tall structures, and look down to gradually ease his fear. Strongly clinching the handrail of, at the top, the 124th floor outdoor observation deck of Burj Khalifa, Senator McCornell felt his body wavering with every wave of the dusty wind, at 452 meters above the ground. "Senator, please try the electronic microscope for a view of the city." The pretty guide from the Armani residences prodded the U.S. statesman to do what visitors usually would take as a challenge, viewing the surrounding landscape in real time. Trying not to show his nervousness, McCornell got hold of the augmented reality device. He peeked and was surprised to acquire that sense of being God, surveying his creations as they appear at close range. It's really amazing to see those people and objects below us. The visibility is high and the tide is low today. Try to point your telescope to the east, the guide was persistent. He obliged, and he was astounded. Is that Iran right there? That's right. If you got glider wings attached to your arms, you can jump from here and glide the rest of the 1,000 kilometers, in time for a handshake of warm welcome by President Hassan Rouhani, in the mined beaches of Iran. The guide giggled. The senator was invited by Aaron for a business meeting, in an all-expense-paid trip to Dubai. To his surprise, upon entering the Atmosphere restaurant, he saw several familiar faces, from the White House, Capitol Hill, Pentagon, Wall Street, and even from State Department. A multimedia presentation of Al-Hassani Industries started playing from a video conferencing system in one side of the room. There's one thing in common to all of you. The profile of the AI President CEO filled the screen, and addressed the crowd. Me, being your friend. His remarkable smile elicited eager applause from the visitors. My apologies if you have to travel at least 7,000 miles, for an online chat, when we can have it in the comfort of your offices, he intoned a kind of an excuse of their inconvenience. This is for their protection in the next few days. He is sure that one way or another, these high-ranking US officials will be in hot waters, in relation to their dealings with him. There's no need to mention, that each of these guests had been a recipient of financial favors, in several of their career endeavors through the years. He already made an arrangement, that these people should stay for 1 week in the United Arab Emirates. Each one of you were invited to come for a business pitch. You've known me for so long, so I'm assuming that I have your trust and full support. You got me without question. A congressman, who floated the word on taking the speakership when the chance comes by, readily raised his hand. Just say the word, Aaron. An aggressive stockholder of one of America's biggest banks, signified his commitment. The AI executive carefully chose his words. Gentlemen, the world economy is down due to pandemic. In our country, you've read the papers every day, that people went hungry most of the time. Unemployment had seen its worst since the Great Depression. What then would be the business, that you want us to go into? A presidential advisor thought that he got no time for some niceties. Germ warfare. Everyone was shocked. No one can say a word. Again, that pestering smile of a confident executive. Finally, he explained. Again, I want you to be part of a project related to biological warfare. His laughter through the monitor reverberated throughout the restaurant. I don't think my conscience will allow me to do that, a Pentagon top brass talked to the man on his left. I heard that, General. Aaron suddenly quipped. I'm not asking you to get involved in any genocidal project. But rather, we will be in a business to counter, or much better, to stop the occurrence of such conflict. Senator McCornell stood up. This talk seems to be complicated. Aaron let them sweat for a while, before scraping the cake's icing for them. In the first place, he will have to shell out a bigger share in the budget requirement. You've been aware of the pharmaceutical company that I established in the US. In particular, I would like to thank the patronage of Dr. Maylaz F. Warki for helping us on the hiring of experts, and procurement of technologies needed for the project. He indicated the WHO representative sitting alone in his table. A benign smile from the Eritrean means, a multi-million consultancy fee was properly deposited in a numbered account somewhere. But of course, the benefit is mutual. With the intended withdrawal of support and membership by the US, the WHO is looking for wealthy sponsors throughout the world, and one of the most generous is Al-Hassani Industries. As we speak, a team of researchers at AI Med Laboratory is finalizing the report of the Phase 3 clinical trial it conducted. My business proposal is your investment to the mass manufacturing and distribution of Sinovacs, not just in US soil, but also in the remotest portions of the globe. We are in a hard time. A single penny is difficult to come by, complained a senator. Again, you misunderstood me. Your investment is not in terms of monetary value. I just want your commitment of support to this project. Aaron stood up and walked around his desk, and declared flatly to his bewildered audience, "Your investment would take in a form of policy recommendations, and a corresponding action, in such a way that the US government will execute an exclusive contract with AIMed laboratory. That would be in violation of the antitrust law, tantamount to economic sabotage." Everyone was surprised when a man in dark glasses revealed himself. They keep their silence, as he is one of the populist justices of the court. I know it's a little bit of a sacrifice. The US government as of now does not have any decent act to slow down the ever-increasing rate of casualties due to COVID-19. A delay in the release of the vaccine may aggravate the situation. But even an incidental increase in casualties may be considered as acceptable and justifiable collateral damage. The grave health situation in the country was exploited by this astute businessman. Aided by mass hysteria, misinformation, and hundreds of thousands of viral casualties, Aaron al-Hassani can definitely get support and governmental favors from these high-ranking personalities, who were all indebted to him. His corporate attitude came to the fore. "Partners, your investment will always be appreciated. Do take note that we are at war with COVID-19. Drastic times call for drastic measures." Hot Ice went back to her room, after making certain that no one followed her. The racing motorcycle was tightly covered, and parked in a far corner of the basement garage, used exclusively for apartment tenants. She's been observing the movements of the couple, ever since they visited the office a month ago. Lately, she was able to gather that Louise and Yusuf were planning to hit an unnamed CIA agent and the AIMed scientist, out of a tip given to her boss from a jihadist informant. She did a good hunch following them tonight from a distance. She was surprised when she saw at the Palisades that Dr. Deadlier was with Professor Fitzgerald, the target operative whom she knew very well from CIA dossiers. The same agent is presently conducting the investigation on the assassination of his former Army Ranger commander, General Friedrich Clark. The thrill of being on the street again was intoxicating. This is what she was trained for 10 years ago. But at least, her regular visits to firing ranges still gave her some modest skill in shooting, even at a running target. The hot pursuit started when Yusuf spotted the Porsche car along Sunset Boulevard. She saw how Louise started shooting at the vehicle of Sage, on its approach to Beverly Hills 9/11 Memorial Garden. Although she was ready, but she cannot force an armed encounter, for fear that civilians around them may be hit indiscriminately. When the terrorists slowed down and stalled because of traffic, that's the moment she had waited. A well-aimed M67 fragmentation hand grenade, thrown at the undercarriage of the Versa gave the intended result. Only the car of Yusuf was totally impaired, as it took the full blast from a large number of metal fragments projected at high velocities. The damage to nearby vehicles were mostly blown tires, and severe fright or minor injuries of its occupants. After she saw that the CIA agent and the scientist were all right, she left the scene of the attempted assassination. She thought that maybe she needs to lessen her work on pushing papers in the office, but instead engaged again in the active cloak and dagger business of the company. Aboard the American Airlines 8 o'clock evening flight to Vero Beach, Louise replayed the night's events. The sudden departure from Los Angeles was decided by Ahmed, right after she and Yusuf came back to Zulfikar Resort, after their failed operation against the CIA operative and the scientist. She was the first in this latest operation to be promoted to commander of Vero Beach Task Force by the Emir, along with the incentive of $2 million in her account. If the operation is successful, she will rule the entire East African region, under ISIS hegemony.
We are in the final phase of our project. Prepare Vero Beach as our transitory point of departure. Ahmed gave an explicit instruction. The Florida property of the Emir has served for months as logistics area of Operation Zulfikar. It will become the rendezvous right after the operation for Ahmed's warriors to disperse to other locations. Part of the deal is to prepare the needed documents and personal effects for top officers to go back to the Middle East. Luis, Yusuf, and a select company of Al-Qaeda ISIS special forces will stay behind for a while, to enable Ahmed and other participating international fighters to go back to their respective countries. It is expected that after this operation, the caliphate will establish an initial territory, then ultimately return to its rightful base where Prophet Muhammad started it all, Mecca.
She is still puzzled of the identity of that motorist, who intervened in her attack to the car of the CIA agent. That's unexpected, something that Ahmed and Amir had vigorously debated, of who could have gotten wind of their plan. Somebody in the organization, obviously a competent mole, is silently gnawing at the Al-Qaeda ISIS top leadership structure. Dr. Guinevere del Pilar had not gotten her mind off to the series of events in her work. She never told anyone except Sage about what she found out in the AI Med laboratory. She is sure that the arenavirus specimen was tampered. The security system were of no help, for it seems that the entire laboratory was abandoned on the day that they were not around. She's still shaken with the shooting incident, in which she sustained a mild concussion and a 4-stitch cut in her head. But it's not fear. Rather, she felt exhilaration with the recent actions. So much happened lately, be it her engagements in researches in various laboratories, or the likely emotional attachment with Sage. Scientists of AI Med Laboratory successfully concluded the Phase 3 clinical trial of Sinovac. Along with those from partner agencies, volunteers through the Solidarity trial were made available by the World Health Organization. It can be said that the vaccine is ready to be applied for approval by the FDA. Her work in the US is almost done. Dr. Hubert Manville called yesterday if she can wrap up her stint with AI Med and come back to IP to be part of the team that will try to formulate antiviral medicines for COVID-19. One candidate is an indigent material from your country, coconut. I hope you take the lead for its study. He enticed her to get involved. She was glad to have talked again with her dissertation advisor. That's very timely. I have a hypothetical formula for a COVID-19 virus antidote, using virgin coconut oil. Oh, excellent! Exclaimed the Frenchman. He knows the reliability and brilliance of his advisee. I'm going to email it to you for safekeeping. She learned her lessons with the virus X and arenavirus specimen being stolen in a so-called impenetrable laboratory. When it comes to securing an intellectual property nowadays, she doesn't trust anymore even her own shadow. Chaos ensued in many countries, as casualties due to COVID-19 increased significantly. Political unrest and economic meltdown were manifested. For totalitarian leaders, the pandemic gave them the justification to unilaterally declare martial law to their constituents. The death toll in the US consistently fall within the 5% mark from its accumulated cases. So far, the fatality from the virus is already more than half of all military and civilian personnel killed during World War II. This figure signify that about 20% of the total deaths in the world were Americans. Democratic candidate Joe Biden pointed at the incumbent president for the latter's panicked response to the pandemic. It is what it is, because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. Wrong. Quickly came Mr. Trump's signature one-word rebuttal to the issue, to cut off the former vice president in the explosive presidential debate. While still on campaign trail, the two candidates used the pandemic to their advantage. The incumbent sometimes portray his rival as a sleepy geriatric, who should be in a care home because he doesn't know he's alive. At others, Trump would speak of Biden as a wily manipulator, who conspired with the deep state and China. But most of the time, the former is usually out of topics, for the way he mishandled the COVID-19 situation in the country. The final bone that keeps sticking in the president's throat is the collapse of a strong economy, despite the promising China trade deal at the start of the year. The economic hardships and the tens of thousands of fatalities every day pushed the Americans across social strata to blame the Trump administration for ineptness in handling the health crisis. Dr. William Blitsky, the assistant to the president for planning and special affairs, thought that he's done enough for the White House as its nominal troubleshooter. In the last 4 years, he did everything to plug in all the gaps caused by Trump's me-centric leadership approach. Enough is enough. Bill Blitsky smiled broadly upon stepping on the porch of his Tucson bungalow in Arizona. There's a sense of calm and relief after shedding all those daily burdens in the nation's capital. The House seems to be in a dilapidated state due to inattention after he transferred temporarily to Washington, D.C., when Trump pulled him in 2016 from the University of Arizona. The re-election campaign is on the final stretch, and the boss did some shaking of the management staff, and the first to fall is the IPSA, who was pointed out to become the scapegoat of the president's declining ratings in the poll. Living alone after a painful divorce and separation from his daughters, Bill imagined some sort of a rehabilitation plan to put his life back on track. Looking to the east, he got an inspiration.
Bill, I've seen the papers. Perhaps you now have the time for lecturing in educational leadership and policy. The dean of the College of Education called him while still at the airport. I still have to square things out, came his reply. Sure you will. Maybe next week, the gang will pass by for a drink. Dr. Blitsky led a quite academic life in UA before the political turbulence. Back then, in almost every week, his colleagues will come over for tennis in his yard, and for some refreshments. A class or two is fine with me. My psyche needs to be recalibrated back to the academe. When he left the White House, his first idea is to spend some time writing on something out of his experiences from the nation's capital. Only so few got the privilege of knowing the workings of the world's most powerful country at close range, sort of a memoir. The WHO failed to adequately obtain, vet and share information in a timely and transparent fashion. The U.S. president criticized the World Health Organization for allegedly ignoring credible reports of the virus spreading in Wuhan in early December 2019, or even earlier. Bill agreed to this notion, including the other fact that despite media reports on suspected outbreak of disease with a SARS-like virus from health workers in Wuhan hospitals, the WHO seems to mimic the impression of Beijing that there was no human-to-human transmission of the virus that's happening in China. But one of the things that he openly disagreed with the president is Washington's accusation of the WHO's lack of independence from the Chinese government, including the health agency's seemingly interference in the U.S. internal affairs of imposing travel bans. That's a very dangerous move, Mr. President. Now, more than ever, the American people would be better off if we still partner with WHO. This UN agency can still provide our scientists and medical professionals with the kind of information that will help them formulate the weapon to combat COVID-19, he recalled strongly saying those words at the Oval Office, especially when Mr. Trump insisted to start with the process of severing the country's ties with the World Health Organization. The problem was that a lot of White House bigwigs and influencers from Capitol Hill can't get their acts together, probably because of lack of proper information or inadequate preparation to counter with the global health crisis. Or maybe a novel on policy implications and international affairs related to the pandemic. A fictional write-up would best suit his idea of bearing the inappropriateness of directives that led to political debacles and misfortunes of Americans to properly cope with the pandemic, from a government leadership that has become egocentric and uncaring, as the COVID-19 death cases kept on increasing as days go by. Thank you for watching. Write in the comments section for your request as to what book, usually from Project Gutenberg, you want us to feature in U-Book channel.
Click like to boost the rating of uBook channel, make a comment for us for the improvement of our services, and share this video to your friends, with the copyright intact. Please click subscribe, and hit the bell button to be notified of new uploads from uBook channel.